Let's start with the certainty or uncertainty piece. Today, as it stands, with the Section 232 probe launched into the semiconductor industry, do we understand what this administration's tariff policy is?
That is the question of the hour. I mean, I think it's quite remarkable, and we should start there, that this sector, which is arguably the critical sector for our economy, for national security, we seem to be making policy on the fly. So what happened? On Friday, Customs put out a list, and it became clear that electronics, not just semiconductors, were going to be exempt from the reciprocal tariffs. Then, over the weekend, the Commerce Secretary, Lutnick, said, well, that's only going to be, this reprieve is only temporary. Then Stephen Miller, the president's deputy chief of staff, said that they'd be subject to this national security review, and the president reiterated that, saying that the tariffs were going to be 25% plus. So making policy for this incredible sector over the weekend. And what's so incredible is that this is the sector that is, you know, especially the Mag 7, right? They're 10% of GDP. They're a huge proportion of the S&P. And here we are making policy like this.
Let me ask you this. It's about communication. You know, you've held office in the White House in the field of technology. You've been an ambassador to the OECD and understand global trade. The communication from this administration, how is it received, interpreted, understood and acted on by other jurisdictions like the European Union or China, for example?
I mean, you know, this to make policy and change it like this is so difficult for other countries to adjust to. You know, I mean, we just saw this with Europe today, but I think they've been prepared. That's what's interesting here, is that I think you see not only some companies like Apple seems to have been planning for a long time for this kind of not this level of disruption, but some disruption. China seems to be prepared and not being caught flat-footed. But still, as you know, the global supply chains involve so much investment, involve so much time, and this kind of disruption is incredibly difficult for them. But then, as you're asking about the countries, governments are not that familiar with the inner workings of these sectors. And so they're learning on the fly as well what's important, what's not important, and what the implications of all this are. And for them to do that kind of homework and then respond is incredibly difficult.
What is the end goal of using tariffs as a tool or policy for this administration, Karen?
Well, at the risk of sane washing, which is a term that's been used here and when people try to interpret some of the Trump administration's policies, it seems like the tariffs are gradually falling into three main buckets. One is about raising revenue, the 10% across the board tariffs, which could raise $200 billion or more. A second one, which is where we see the semiconductors, the semiconductor machinery and the electronics, as well as steel, autos, aluminum falling, maybe timber, is national security. Okay. And then there's a third one, which is the overall competitiveness and job creation, where we see these reciprocal tariffs that look like they're for negotiating down tariffs overseas.
Could I ask you about that third bucket? Because the big headline of the last 24 hours is this commitment from NVIDIA to build $500 billion worth of AI infrastructure. We're talking goods and sales, not a CapEx commitment in America. And the criticism of the past administration, which you participated in and served in, was that the CHIPS Act on paper was one thing, but unlocking the funding from it and actually getting people moving to onshore didn't really happen. Is Trump now achieving that with a different tool?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. You know, there were announcements made under Trump 1. There were announcements of a huge amount of investment, and there was actually quite a lot of investment that was made under Biden as well. So far, these are announcements: the Apple announcement, the NVIDIA announcement, the TSMC announcement. TSMC in the past has made announcements of investments, but then they haven't been able to find the workers that they need. And what you're going to see now for all of these companies, they may make announcemements, but when it comes down to it, their prices are going to go up. There's going to be a delay in their being able to get the equipment, and then there's a worker shortage. So if we want to see any of this come, I think we're going to have to lock down the certainty. We can't be driving prices up, and there needs to be serious workforce training.
Karen, to end, are we stepping back from the brink here, or is this just a pause while the administration kind of works out the most effective method?
So the Section 232 investigation, this is the national security investigation that's going to happen for the electronics. That they put a deadline on comments for a month from now, and they're going to move really quickly. I think the president has really stuck his neck out. He personally has said that the tariffs are going to be 25% plus, so I think we can expect to see those. And when you think about that, plus perhaps the fentanyl tariff, or certainly the fentanyl tariffs of 20% from China, I think you're going to still see very high tariffs. I think you're going to see uncertainty. I think you're going to see raising costs. So I hope, as they're making policy on the fly, they're going to realize how critical this sector is, and they're going to address a bunch of those vulnerabilities in this policy where they can't reach the results they want to reach.